fictitious characters. The reason I chose to do that is because the stories are very personal. And when I started out thinking that I could do the I and we and me, that didn't work because I am one of the characters. So it was just too close. So by creating characters, then I could back off and tell the story through them. As a result of that, I find myself referring to these characters like they're somebody else. So anyway, that's what I do. It's a series of 3 books, and I am down to the last. Every author in here knows what that means, but I'm down to like the last few little chapters to finish that 3rd book. The other thing that I do that's a little bit different is that with each book, I also release a music CD of original music because the stories all evolve and revolve around music. The main character of the books was a Texas musician. He is actually listed in the Texas State Historical Association as a music pioneer. He's also listed in the West Texas Hall of Fame as a music pioneer and rockabilly. So the stories do revolve around music, and that's why the CDs go with them. So the book that I'm going to read from today is the 2nd book of the 3. Each book does stand alone. You don't have to read one to know what's going on in the others because I do a little bit of backstory in each one through dialogue or whatever. And so this one was the one that won, and I'm very proud of it. I mean, I'm absolutely honored to be here. When I entered the book, I thought, yeah, whatever. But I feel very honored, and I know all of us as authors, we do. It's been a great weekend. I think we have been treated with the utmost respect, and I just have felt good about everything we did. I'm so sorry that JC got lost last night, and we really were worried about him. We're fixing to send out a search party. But other than that, everything else has been wonderful. So I'm just going to read a little bit, and then if you have any questions, we'll talk. There's a poem in the beginning of the book that was actually written by Willie Nelson, and it was used with permission, but there it says, "Was it something I did, Lord, a lifetime ago? Am I just now paying a debt that I owe? Justice, sweet justice, you travel so slow, but you cannot change my love for the rose." And that's how the poem is and how it begins. I also would tell you that the book cover was actually a album cover that was designed by the main character of the book for an album for Willie. And it was a commissioned album cover. It never got released because about the time he was ready to release it, IRS started looking at him for tax evasion. And his attorneys advised him not to have any association with a convict. So I used the cover. It's like, might as well use it, right? Okay. The setting of the book is actually in Leavenworth Penitentiary, Leavenworth, Kansas, or part of it. The stone-cold gray walls and unforgiving steps leading to Leavenworth Penitentiary spared no welcome to Luke Stone as he descended from the prison bus. Iron ankle chains shaved his skin, and the heavy handcuffs and belly chain bit into his wrist. He hopped from the bottom step to the ground and cast a worried glance at his destination. The man ahead of him stumbled and fell to his knees. The guard quickly prodded him with his nightstick. "Get up, convict, no lagging behind." Luke gritted his teeth and tightened his jaw, but remained in line. The formidable steps grew as he went. 37, 38, the chains gnawed at the skin around his ankles. Number 42, the massive doors groaned open, ready to swallow his life as he passed through. You can imagine if you were going to prison what it might feel like. Guards escorted the prisoners through the total of 6 heavy metal doors, leading deeper into the belly of the prison. They slammed shut with a deadly ring that echoed off the stone walls. Jaw set, eyes as hard as the steel that held him, captive, Luke shuffled forward. The words from the aging judge still echoed in his brain. Luther Martin Stone, I hereby sentence you to 25 years in the federal penitentiary for armed bank robbery. The sentence is to run concurrently with the 50-year state sentence you already have. So this man entered prison with a 75-year prison sentence. Didn't look too good. The other character of the book is Darlena Flowers, aka me. Darlena Flowers towel-dried her long auburn hair and opened the windows in her apartment. Spring filled the air and bright sunshine filtered through the curtains as a gentle breeze rustled them. April 30th, 1972 was shaping up to be a beautiful spring day. The radio played, "Bye Bye Miss American Pie." Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. She hummed along with the song and looked forward to a long ride on the motorcycle. She hummed along with the song and looked forward to a long ride in the countryside on the back of William Brocker's Harley Davidson with its long raked front and high chrome handlebars. After Luke's incarceration, Will had turned out to be the one person who didn't judge her or Luke. She loved riding on the motorcycle with him, and even though 6 months had passed since her sister had first introduced them, they'd never kissed or shared more than a brief hug. It provided a comfortable friendship Darlena desperately needed. Sipping a fresh cup of coffee, she sat at the small kitchen table and let her vision drift out the open window. A fat robin perched on a tree branch and a butterfly floated by. As they so often did, her thoughts turned to Luke Stone. There was no forgetting their first encounter at the Faded Rose, where she worked part-time as a fledgling go-go dancer and waitress. She had been drawn to him like a moth to an all-consuming flame. They couldn't have been more opposite. Her, young and naive, and him, a seasoned Texas musician with 2 marriages under his belt. He took her breath away and captured her heart completely. What a roller coaster ride he had taken her on, from his first indecent proposal to an unbreakable bond of love that formed between them. If only he hadn't been sent to prison, things would have been so different. She gazed at the small photograph on the shelf, a memory frozen in time from a trip to Mexico with Luke. He had made her feel alive, made her feel loved. Most of all, he'd made her feel like a woman. How was she supposed to live now without those things? That's the introduction to the 2 main characters in the story. And as I said, the stories revolve around music. So Luke sat in a straight-backed wooden chair, quietly strumming his guitar. It was New Year's Eve, and in a few months would be 1974. The small lamp glowed in an almost mocking way, reflecting his gaunt frame on the wall behind him. In the stillness of the night, his thoughts turned to Darlena, and he wondered where she'd be spending New Year's Eve. He thumbed through a tablet and found a blank page. He had to put his thoughts on paper. He didn't know if she'd ever see the words he wrote, but if she did, she'd know instantly they were for and about her. He absent-mindedly strummed chords while looking at the empty page, waiting to be turned into a song. He felt the familiar surge pass through his fingers to the guitar, and in that moment, everything connected. The dots all fit together. He wrote with vigor, stopping to strum and write down chords. I'm losing you, and Lord knows I've lost enough to know. There's nothing I can do but let you go. I just want you to know what's in this heart of mine. I love you more this moment than he will in a lifetime. I can't stand to think of tomorrow. It will be so hard to bear. I'll need you more in times of sorrow, these tender words I share. True love is what I feel, and I love you more this moment than he ever will. There is more to you, woman, than just loving charms. It would thrill anyone to hold you in their arms. But they don't really know you. There's much of you to understand. I love you more this moment, more than he ever can. Luke sat for the longest time, letting the words he'd written echo through his lonely soul. How was it possible that one man and one woman could love each other so deeply that nothing, not time nor distance, or even death, could destroy it? Needing solace, he reached for his ceremonial feathers and tobacco. A peace washed over him that came with this new way of worshiping the Great Spirit. He wished for a window that he could gaze out at the stars, but had none, so created stars in his mind to see through closed eyes. After tying a strip of leather around his head and slipping feathers into it, he sat cross-legged on his hard bunk. He lit the tobacco in a pipe and began sacred ceremony to celebrate the gift of a new year of life. He slowly turned over in his mind everything he could think of to give thanks for. Funny how a man could find thankfulness even in this desolate, God-forsaken place. The smoke from the campfires of his ancestors swirled about his head. In the midst of it, he heard chants of the medicine man calling in magic and protection for his people. In Luke's soul, he was a part of this. His vision took on personal proportions, and he saw Darlena, dressed in a simple leather dress, feathers and flowers in her hair, watching him with pure love in her eyes. In his imagination, he moved toward her and took her into his outstretched arms. The feel of her moving against him was as real as the beating of his heart. He let the scene unfold before him, and like an intruder, watched as he slipped the dress over her head, leaving her naked body glistening in the firelight. And we move on. Darlena began to give a lot of serious thought about a way to get Luke paroled from prison. The recent attempt made by the attorneys with the National Prisoners' Rights Union had failed, so it was back to square one. Luke had told her some time back that he was eligible for parole from the feds, and had been for a while, but the Texas sentence still hung over his head. He described going from the federal prison to state as jumping from the frying pan to the fire. So he continued to turn down federal parole to keep from being transferred to Huntsville. Darlena wrote letters to the parole board, state senators, representatives, prison activist groups, and even the governor's office, trying to find someone to help. How could they not see that he had accomplished so much since he had been behind bars? Surely he had earned his freedom after 12 years. Her walls were covered with Luke's oil paintings. She wore beautiful beaded necklaces and had ornate and uniquely magnificent leather purses. As more boxes arrived, she received cassette tapes of the music they recorded in the prison studio, hidden inside intricately crafted ceramic bowls. All she could think about was Luke's freedom. He belonged beside her and the girls where he dreamed of being, if they could only find the right key that would unlock the doors of prison. So I will not tell you how this story ends, but it is a true story, like I said, and the twist or the difference in this story is that this man was convicted of a crime he did not do. He had knowledge of the crime, but because he would not tell them what he knew, he was convicted of armed robbery. And at the time they wanted to make an example, so 75 years was what he was given. The thing that this book does, and the whole message of this story, is through adversity and through being in a very desperate, desolate situation, a person can literally turn themselves, no one can do it for you, turn themselves from being an angry, negative person to being and doing positive and good things. And that's what happened. That is all in here, and it's all happened. So the music with the CD that goes with this book was all recorded inside the walls of Leavenworth Prison in a makeshift recording studio that is a whole story within itself, and it's in the book. There's one song on the CD that was not recorded in prison, and it's the title track. When I was going through files, boxes, letters, everything I needed to write this story, I ran across some song lyrics that I'd never seen, I'd never heard mentioned, I'd never heard them played, did not know how they went, but the words were so strong that I felt compelled to find somebody to put music to them and record it. Besides me, I didn't feel capable of doing it. It starts out, it's like, got a helpless, hopeless feeling like a bird that can't fly, like a man not living but one that can't die. And so anyway, that's a whole other story. But I approached, and if anybody are familiar with Texas music or red dirt music, Jamie Richards is very well known in that circuit, and so I love Jamie. So I went to Jamie with the lyrics and said, would you consider putting music? He said, I'll look at them and I'll be honest. If I'm not interested, I'll tell you so. He read the first verse and he just shook his head. So we went into the studio and Jamie recorded 40 Foot High was the name of the song. We are working on a music CD that is almost completed. And so, anybody have any questions? I mean, I know I threw a lot out there, but anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
How long did it take you to write this and move it to the point of publication?
It's taken me approximately a year to write each book.
Okay, that's fast.
It's taken about a year, yeah. Yes.
Do you know what are the copyright issues involved in using song lyrics?
They're all our original songs. I own all the copyrights.
Well, what about American Pie?
You can quote anything in a book. You can quote anything. You cannot claim to have any rights to it, but you can quote words of anything. And I did look into it. And as far as the things, like there are excerpts from actual letters in here from Willie Nelson and Connie Nelson, and I got full permission to use those letters before I put them in here because I would not do it without their permission.
How did you pull off getting the Leavenworth studio?
The story is, and I'll try to make it real quick, but while Luke Stone was incarcerated, because he was a music man, he was so driven to keep writing, and he did. He wrote, I mean, I've got hundreds and hundreds of songs and poetry, all this stuff. But anyway, he was so driven to try and get the music outside the walls that he advocated with several different wardens as they changed for a recording studio. Finally, one said, I'll give you permission to do it. I'll give you an area. We've got no funding. If you can pull it off, go for it. So they literally took pieces of broken electronics. They took bits and pieces of everything they could get to put together a mixing board and a recorder and the microphones. They had to repair broken microphones. They took egg crates from the kitchen and glued them on the stone walls to buffer the sound. They took, as the chapel got new carpet, they begged for the old carpet, put the carpet down on the stone floors or the concrete floors to buffer that sound. And they actually came out with some pretty darn good music. It's all on the CD. Well, some of it is. That's not even half of it. But that's the story behind the studio. And that's the thing that, again, back to doing something positive in a place where you're very oppressed, and to have that drive to be and think and do positive. So the recording studio was a very positive thing. And for a while it became like the showplace for the prison. Whenever anybody came through to tour, judges, state representatives, when they would come to Leavenworth, they were brought there because that was a success story. That was something good and positive. So that's how the music got done. Anybody else? I have books with me. I'd be happy to autograph. If you don't want a book, please stop and pick up a bookmark because everybody needs a bookmark, even authors.
Where are the CDs?
Alan would not let me put the CDs out. I have some with me, but because they're not in their inventory, he wouldn't let me put them out. But I do have some with me.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to show them.
You have to sell them to us.
We go out on the sidewalk and I'd sell them to you. Anybody else? Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody that came out, and this has been an amazing weekend and showing the support for Dear Texas, and we hope next year will be even bigger and better. So thank y'all.